Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be diving into 5 wide receivers that I absolutely love for this fantasy season. These are must-draft players, must-have players, must-own players, whatever you want to call them. We did the same thing yesterday with our 5 running backs, and we'll be posting more of these videos incrementally throughout the offseason. So if you're new around here, you need to drop down, click that subscribe button, and join the SFS community here. If you're looking for a draft guide, you can get access to all of my must-own players for this season. We've got them listed out in rounds 1 through 20 based on ADP on sizzlefantasy.com, and you can get yourself hooked up with draft guide access for heading over to Underdog Fantasy and using promo code SFS when you deposit $10 or more. They're going to match your first deposit, so if you put $10 in, you're going to get 20 to play with, and the SFS draft guides, again, on sizzlefantasy.com for free. Or if you put in $100, they'll give you $100 more to play with, so you'll have $200 total in your account to play with on Underdog for this season, and you're going to get the SFS draft guides free again when you use promo code SFS. The link to join Underdog is in the description of today's video, or you can go check out some of our other pricing options on sizzlefantasy.com. But today, again, 5 must-own running backs here for the 2022, wide receivers. We did running backs yesterday. We're going to be talking through this stuff and diving into our top 5 players, or at least the 5 guys we've got on the list for today's video. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, here we go. So the first name I've got up on the list today that I'm very excited about, I might be even more excited about these wide receivers than I was about the running backs, who I absolutely love in yesterday's video. But the first name we've got here today is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right now, his ADP is the 18.8 overall pick on Underdog best ball formats. I think that, if you're talking a 12-team format here, getting a guy like Mike Evans in the mid-second round is an absolute steal. This is a player who should easily finish as a wide receiver 1 this season and could even finish in the top half of that category. So 6th or higher. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement upon his statistical production last season because of some changing elements in the situation for the Bucs offense this season. Namely, yesterday we had the retirement of Rob Gronkowski. Now, there's always the possibility he comes back. Personally, though, I doubt he retires a second time and then creates a situation where he has an inevitable 3rd retirement. But having Gronk removed from that situation opens up a lot of opportunity, not only just in the targets department, but also in the area of red zone opportunity. Rob Gronkowski, someone that had 89 targets for this Buccaneers offense in the 2021 season, as well as another guy, Antonio Brown. You might have heard of him. He had 62 targets in this offense last season before possibly ending his football career by literally stripping down in New York and throwing his gear into the stands. So AB is a conversation for another time. All you need to do is associate the number 62 with Antonio Brown, because that's how many targets were vacated by his departure this offseason, or really he didn't even depart in the offseason. He just called her quits in the middle of the season. So Gronk, though, the main important thing is you've got in 12 games here, 12 red zone targets. These are very, very crucial and important because obviously a target in the red zone can easily turn into 6 or more fantasy points. For a guy like Mike Evans, who's 6'5" tall and is an elite red zone weapon in his own right, he's easily the next best target, if he wasn't already a better target than an aged and out of his prime Rob Gronkowski, to absorb this target volume, to absorb this opportunity for the NFL's number 1 ranked passing offense in the 2021 season. So, again, that was 15th ranked overall for Gronk, 12 red zone targets in 12 games. So imagine how many he would have had he played the full 17-game schedule. He missed 5 contests last year. He was pretty dinged up. And I think that the wear and tear on his body is probably inevitably what led to his 2nd retirement here. But for Mike Evans, last season wasn't the most impressive statistical year from a volume standpoint, but he got the job done because he was able to play at a highly efficient level. It wasn't, requiring a high volume of targets for him to have fantasy success on a week-to-week basis. He only had a 16.4% target share of this offense in the 2021 season. And yes, 16.4% of the Bucs offense does go a little bit further than some other offenses because the passing volume number overall was higher. But this was still a regression from the 18% he had in the 2020 season. And you're talking about, again, Tom Brady, who was number 1 in pass yards last season, number 1 in passing attempts, and number 1 in team passing plays per game, that being the Buccaneers offense as a whole. So when we look at Mike Evans, last season he was number 11 in red zone targets amongst the fantasy football wide receiver position. This year, I think that number has the opportunity to grow. Again, you've got 2 pivotal factors exiting the offensive situation here, opening up more targets now. You also have Chris Godwin, who's recovering from that ACL injury. I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be fine. We'll talk about how I like him and where on the draft board I like him in a future episode. But lo and behold, this opens up the door and, opens the floodgates wide open for massive point production from Mike Evans. And he could tap back in to a ceiling, not necessarily consistently the level that it was in his final years with Jameis Winston when he was just rocketing the ball downfield and Evans was winning 50-50 balls and turning those into 75-25 balls and having, absurd fantasy weeks. But I do think he gets closer to those numbers because we haven't seen him be that level of a player since Jameis Winston left the situation and we transitioned to Tom Brady here in Tampa. Now, I think that at the end of the day, you've got Russell Gage coming into the situation, so it's not like he's going to absorb all of these targets. There are other players. Cameron Braid's going to get some of that receiving work at the tight end position. K-Dot is kind of a sleeper I really like in Dynasty formats if you're into that sort of thing. As always, if you check out sizzlefantasy.com, we've got our Dynasty profiles completed for our top 60 rookies. We've got Dynasty positional rankings, big board rankings, and again, a whole separate category for those rookies. But K-Dot is someone I really like to keep my eye on for long term in that Tampa offense. Excuse me. So overall, I think the situation is just playing out very favorably for Evans here again with a 1.6% regression in target share from 2020 to the 2021 season. I think we could see that number push closer towards even 20% or maybe even north of that number here as we move into this season. Again, he's not a super high volume player. He's not someone that needs to have high volume because of the work he does in the end zone, not even the red zone, the end zone, because he can catch deep touchdown passes or he can run 1 yard, corner fade routes where he just jumps up and mosses the defensive back covering him. So he's a mismatch. He's a great player. I think he easily gets into the top half of the wide receiver 1 position group this season, just with that expected increase in volume and the situation he has offensively. I don't think there's any question Tampa will be a top 3 to 5 passing offense this year, and they showed last year. They want to throw the football around the yard. They want to get Tom Brady his numbers, and unless Tom Brady just falls off a cliff, which is something I'm really not comfortable with saying because he hasn't done it to this point, and he's entering in his age 45 season. The things he does are just unprecedented here, so I expect a very, very good for Mr. Mike Evans here. T. Higgins, someone else I've been getting really excited about lately here as we've moved through the month of June here. We're getting into the later stages of June right now, but my analysis and my opinion of T. Higgins has only become more positive as the summer has progressed. You're talking about a 6'4", 216-pound wide receiver with really great skills, really, elite potential as a player. Now, his situation caps his ceiling just a bit because you've got that hypothetical second fiddle role to Jamar Chase, which I actually don't really like saying he's the second fiddle because I think he's very much more of a 1B to Jamar Chase's 1A. These are 2 receivers that could both be number 1s on almost any NFL team. T. Higgins, again, has fantastic frame, size. I think that his ability at that size and with the wingspan that he has to be an elite red zone weapon hasn't even been tapped into yet because of how efficient this Bengals offense has been. They're stretching the ball downfield and hitting big plays vertically over the top. They don't really need to have too much of a red zone passing offense because then you've got Joe Mixon, who is number 3 in red zone touches at the running back position last year. They're running the ball effectively inside the 20-yard line. They're throwing the ball really effectively over the top. Joe Burrow is number 1 in deep passing accuracy and under pressure throw rate. And for a guy who led the Bengals in target share last year, this being T. Higgins, not Jamar Chase, 23.9% to Jamar Chase's 23.7%, you've got a really nice argument here for why T. Higgins every single year could be a low-end wide receiver 1. Between that wide receiver 8 and 12 overall range, now he was just the wide receiver 24 this past season. He did miss 3 games, so that's something important to note there as well. But points per game, this guy is going to be really consistent. We saw him dominate in the fantasy playoffs. He was killing teams over the top and just eating up their secondary downfield. he's a coverage mismatch. This is a guy, again, who had Jamar Chase not been the draft pick for the Bengals in the 2021, or excuse me, the 2021 draft, you easily could have seen T. Higgins be the number one wide receiver for this Bengals team last year. Do they make the Super Bowl? I'm not sure. Had they went Penei Sewell, would they have gotten as far? I don't really know the answer to that question. However, I sure know that T. Higgins would have absolutely thrived and dominated had he been Joe Burrow's number one wide receiver this past season. Even as the number two, this is arguably the best offensive situation, or at least one of the best quarterbacks to be tied to as an insanely talented number two wide receiver on a team, if you want to consider him as such. Because I know there is a class of people out there that prefer T. Higgins over Jamar Chase. Personally, I'm a Jamar Chase over T. Higgins guy. ADP reflects that. That's the general consensus of fantasy this year. But hey, consensus isn't always right. Again, I am on Team Jamar Chase over T. Higgins, but I think that they can easily coexist, easily find ways to be successful and dominate at a high level as an offense. This is just a situation you want to tie yourself to. Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense reaps fantasy football success, or at least that's the way it looks like things are set up heading into this season. So I did want to talk about T had he was 29th in red zone targets. We kind of started on that page there, but didn't really get into the analytics quite. He had he was ranked 29th in red zone targets. He only had 13 of them. He converted them into 7 receptions for 6 touchdowns. That's over a 50% conversion rate in terms of receptions. Now, what I want to talk about, though, is that 6 touchdown number could easily increase. This is a guy who has the size and skill set that favors himself in the red zone. He has fantastic ability in sideline awareness, if that makes any sense to you. Essentially, he is phenomenal at toe drag catches, working the boundary. He is very good at staying inbounds and making tough catches. Again, that size allows him to be very successful in contested catch situations, and just overall his height will allow him to have, and obviously he's a very good athlete, he's going to have leaping ability to go up and make contested grabs and tough catches over defensive players. So again, I think this is a super high floor wide receiver too. His ADP right now, he is a super high floor, low end wide receiver 1, and at his worst, I think he's an elite wide receiver 2. His ADP is surging a little bit right now. 24.1 overall is the draft pick in which he's being selected with here. But I think that if there's any opportunity where he falls to you in the 3rd round of your drafts, this is absolutely a must-own player at that spot on the board. Again, his ADP is a bit on the rise here, but in those circumstances and situations where he falls down a little bit, no reason to pass on T. Higgins. He's not going to win your league, but he's certainly not going to be a guy who puts your ability to have a contending team in jeopardy. Michael Pittman is someone who I think might have more upside and ceiling than T. Higgins does this year. The floor isn't nearly as good, but I love the situational change that we're seeing here in Indianapolis, and that's giving me more faith and confidence in Pittman as a receiver for this season. Pittman's ADP is the mid-3rd round, 30.7 overall, so about literally dead in the middle of a 12-team format, the 6th pick in the 3rd round of drafts. 6'4", 223 pounds, so just a 7-pound difference between him and T. Higgins. Very similar in terms of their size and frame, but Michael Pittman is giving you a little bit better volume because he is the clear number 1 on this team at this point in time. We'll see what Alec Pierce means for that target share, but I expect Michael Pittman for 2022 to easily be the top guy. 129 targets converted into 88 receptions with Carson Wentz a season ago, and the quality of targets from Carson Wentz were very low. When we talk about what Matt Ryan brings to the table here, being the number 2 ranked quarterback in deep passing accuracy a season ago, for a guy of this size, with the speed that Michael Pittman has and the ability to be a phenomenal possession catch receiver, but can also stretch the field vertically, it has that size we just talked about to be a potentially very good red zone weapon. Now, Matt Ryan is not very good throwing in the red zone. He's not exactly a perfect tight window quarterback or someone who's done that well recently for the Atlanta Falcons. But I think it provides a lot of opportunity for Pittman, who is going to see volume again this year to a greater extent than maybe a T. Higgins will in Cincinnati. He's going to make big-time plays over the top. He has the speed that if he's able to beat the corner vertically and then just get run after the catch, if the safety doesn't catch him, touchdown. I mean, Pittman has that type of talent and ability as an athlete. So You've got a guy as well who this past season was number 3 in total route wins. So he's getting open. He's beating defensive players off the line of scrimmage. And obviously, that can be easily converted into fantasy success when that target quality increases, which I expect it to here with Matt Ryan, who's not exactly, your flashiest quarterback. I don't think he gets talked about enough here. As a fantasy asset, he's kind of a statue. He's not going to run around and get you too many extra points. But in terms of his ability to provide a stable infrastructure for his supporting players in that Colts offense, I love what Matt Ryan brings to this football team. Rashod Bateman, baby, someone I've been excited about and extremely excited about for that, matter since he was drafted to the Baltimore Ravens. The landing spot wasn't always exactly the most exciting thing for me because I thought that he was going to have to overtake Hollywood Brown as the true number 1 for this offense. However, after they shipped Hollywood over to Arizona now, it leaves the door wide open for Rashod Bateman, a former first-round pick last year, to totally take over as the number 1 receiver in this offense. He's probably not going to be more targeted or more utilized than Mark Andrews was in this offense a season ago. However, the opportunity is here, and the player, the talent, what I loved out of Minnesota, has the opportunity to thrive this season. 6 feet tall, 190 pounds. That's pretty good size to be a number 1 receiver in this league. It doesn't bring kind of that X factor type role. You've got a 6'4" receiver in T. Higgins and Michael Pittman, who are obviously above average in terms of their size. But 6 feet is plenty big enough for Rashod Bateman to get the job done as a number 1 player. I kind of comped him somewhat to a Devontae Adams. I don't know if he's nearly as twitchy as Adams is at this day and age, but in terms of his tape, being a guy who can win routes at all 3 levels of the defense, a guy who is not really an elite level athlete, and Devontae wasn't that coming out of Fresno State when he came out back in 2014, but Bateman is a guy who has all the tools that it takes to win. He's a really polished route runner and someone who I think can win at a high level in terms of his routes against the defensive coverage that he's facing. I think he's got what it takes to be number 1 receiver in this league. This isn't the most pass-happy offense. However, I do think that they were very underrated last year in terms of being a team in the top third of the NFL in passing plays per game. So when you got 140 targets vacated from Hollywood Brown leaving and 49 more targets vacated from Sammy Watkins' departure, an ADP of 53.3 just feels too low. We know Bateman's going to get work. We know he's going to find utilization in this offense, and he's a guy who is a really sure-handed player and is going to be a phenomenal possession receiver for this Ravens offense. I expect him to convert a lot more. We'll see if he gets open deep nearly as much as Hollywood Brown did. He doesn't quite have that level of explosiveness downfield, but we'll see. I don't expect Bateman to be dropping these wide open touchdowns that Hollywood was fumbling through his fingers last year. And for a guy that only played 12 games as a rookie, we haven't even scratched the surface of exactly what he can do at the pro level. Again, he runs routes all over the field. I think that whereas he's not as much of a vertical weapon as Hollywood Brown was, he is a lot more versatile and dynamic in terms of the well-rounded skill set that he has. So Hollywood was running a lot of routes, either catching the ball at the line of scrimmage and being asked to do things after the catch, or he was running a deep pattern and getting a deep shot downfield. Bateman's going to be able to attack all areas of the defense, stress them out at multiple angles, and I think that adds a lot of ability for Lamar Jackson, obviously, as a passer, to take some weight off of his shoulders here. So we don't have a big sample size from 2021 again. It's not like this is a absolute surefire slam dunk thing to be a tremendous breakout this season, but the opportunity is too great, and I would really get mad at myself if I passed on Bateman too much in leagues because the talent is there. I saw it on film at Minnesota. He had some nice stretches as well last season as a rookie and made some big plays that were very encouraging to see. I was hoping he'd break out last year and get cut loose in this Ravens offense, but now 2022 has set him up with the infrastructure to do so, and I think he's absolutely going to kill it when he gets the opportunity this year. And then lastly, Darnell Mooney here, maybe even a more explosive player, a better vertical threat than Rashod Bateman is. He has been an absolute, pleasure to watch in his first 2 NFL seasons here. He's been doing some pretty special things, beating some pretty special corners downfield, and obviously proving why and how he can be a top fantasy wide receiver. He's got a chance, if he sees enough volume and if Justin Fields takes the step forward as a passer this season, he could start scratching the surface of a wide receiver 1 finish. Not that he is a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL, But the situation and the volume that he is, penciled in to see in this Bears offense is pretty dang elite. His ADP is just a bit behind Bateman at 59.5 overall. This Bears team is going to have negative game scripts, so they're going to be airing the ball out. And Mooney saw very high levels of volume this past season, and even the season prior as a rookie. He had almost 100 targets as a guy who didn't even start all of the games that rookie season. So this is where talent meets talent. You've got Justin Fields meeting Darnell Mooney, and Fields needs someone to throw the ball to. They don't really have a number 2 receiver in this offense. They have Cole Kmet, and they've got David Montgomery out of the backfield, but really, Velus Jones is the best thing you can do after letting Allen Robinson depart to the Rams in free agency. Mooney, like Michael Pittman, who was very successful, number 3 in route wins this past season. Mooney was number 11 in total route wins this past year. He was number 10 in snap share and number 17 in routes run this past season. So what you love to see there is that you've got a guy who is on the field playing a ton of snaps. And for a player who has a 26.7% target share at 140 looks this past year, you could see that number grow even more. You could talk about getting north of 150 targets this season for Mooney. And if Fields is able to convert those targets into more accurate passes and actually set him up in more situations to succeed and convert those into big plays and opportunities downfield, Mooney has a ridiculous ceiling that needs to be addressed in fantasy leagues this year. It needs to be drafted religiously in the late 5th or early 6th round of leagues. There's no reason not to be drafting Mooney. The conversion rate and the efficiency wasn't great. When I say conversion rate, what I mean is how often is a target, essentially I'm talking about catch rate is the stat that I mean when I'm talking about conversion rate. How often is a target being turned into a reception and therefore producing fantasy yards? What the issue has been for players like Darnell Mooney last season, and he's certainly not the only player here. DJ Moore is someone who struggled with this as well. Bad quarterback accuracy makes it tougher for the receiver to do their job and catch the football. You can get 160 targets in a season, but if over 50% of those aren't catchable passes, there's only so much you can do. So for me, it's about improving the quality of target. Can Justin Fields take the step forward as a passer in terms of his accuracy in delivering the football on time and on target, and get a guy in Mooney who is winning his routes? Again, he was number 11 in total route wins. Can he get him the football, leading downfield, getting him the opportunity to get out in space, win vertically, and all this great stuff that turns into elite efficiency and elite fantasy football success? So Chicago needs more from Darnell Mooney. It's plain and simple. It's straightforward. They need him to make plays. They don't really have that many other playmakers. Their offensive line is bad. They're going to be probably a relatively inefficient rushing offense because David Montgomery can't block for himself. They're going to need this passing offense to move the football downfield. If you're a Bears fan, I'm sorry. It's probably going to be absolutely terrible watching games this year. But again, those negative game scripts are going to help my man Darnell out here. And if Fields can be I see elite potential in Justin Fields. And if he hits on that, boom, Darnell Mooney is going to have a phenomenal, easily top 24 wide receiver season at the fantasy positions, or as fantasy football is concerned here for this season. So I can't wait for these 5 guys in the list. If you guys are excited about these guys, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know who some of your other must-own players are for this fantasy season. And again, remember, if you want to check out my must-own players list or my must-draft players in rounds 1 through 20 of 2022 fantasy football leagues, check out sizzlefantasy.com. We've got, again, promo code SFS on Underdog Fantasy. Deposit $10 or more, get double your money. And the draft guides for free this season. Or, again, you can go check it out and become an SFS Gold member to unlock access to everything on the SFS sizzlefantasy.com website. So, thank you so much, you guys. Again, like and subscribe if you're new around here. Check out some of our other videos. We've got a ton of content up for you all. And I will see you guys back at the new video tomorrow. Peace out.